instead.
Okay.
So if you don't mind,
No problem.
begin again on your point. Starting with the fact that corporal punishment is officially illegal.
Yes, so it's officially illegal in schools, but it still happens, especially in public schools, especially in rural schools. It happens a lot, and that's because, like I said, parents are okay with it. If your parents are okay with that as a form of discipline in the home, you as a child will just take what's dealt to you when you're in school, because you already identify with that as a form of punishment. And even if you felt that it was wrong, there's no one to report to, because when you head back home, that's what's accepted as a form of punishment. And in fact, they'd probably whoop you for getting whooped at school, you know? Like, wait, no, that's not how it's supposed to work. But that's what happens. And so until we change parents' mindsets, which is going to be difficult because, again, let me bring in the religious angle. Spare the rod, spoil the child. So many people have repeated that line to me when I tell them, nah, stop hitting your kids. Like, no, but the Bible says. I'm like, okay, the Bible says a lot of things, but you still don't follow to the letter today. It's a matter of deciding what works for you now, what works for your child now, you know? The rod doesn't necessarily have to be a literal rod. It can be any other form of discipline that you choose. But I feel like people want to stick to what they know. It's easier. It's simpler than expanding their minds. Yeah, it's an easier way out. So instead of expanding their minds and thinking, okay, how can I be a better parent than what was given to me by my parents? They don't want to think that. They think, okay, fine, it worked for my folks, it will work for me. I don't need to think too much about it, let me just do it. And that's no way to parent. You should want better for your children, you should want more for your kids, and you should want more for yourself as an individual and as a parent. You want your children to look back, because this is a big part of what I do as a mom. And I look back and I'm like, this was my experience as a child. I didn't like it. What can I do to change that for my kids? How can I alter my behavior and my mindset to do better for them? And I feel like that's what everyone who chooses to be a parent, everyone who decides to go on the path of parenthood should think like, you know. This might be controversial, but there's a friend of mine who was telling me there should be a system to select who should be a parent, you know, like who should have kids, who should be allowed to have kids. Like, you should have parent points that you collect over some time, you know, so that when you get to a certain point in your life and you're like, I want to be a parent, check your parent points, like, okay, yeah, you're suitable. And I say that because I've seen so many times this cycle of physical abuse, you know, being perpetrated over and over and over and over again, generation after generation, and people are just okay with it. And it's madness. You're like, how are you fine with this? You see what it does to your children, you saw what it did to you, you saw what it did to your parents, so why are you okay with continuing the cycle?
You know, my brother Subukwe made a great point on this the other day.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I will mess it up, but I think the essence of what he said is, in regards to corporal punishment, if you support it and you allow it with your children, you're basically preparing for them to accept it during adulthood.
Exactly.
In abusive relationships or whatever.
And that's why you'll see such a sad situation. A woman gets married and she becomes a punching bag. Like, basically, this is the husband's punching bag. And she goes home and they tell her, oh no, go back to your husband, you know? That's what being a wife is. Tough it out. You know, be strong. We went through it. Like, no, that's not what it should be. That's not what marriage is. That's not what partnership is. You know? And because this woman has been dealt those cards, that's what she's gonna do to her kids. I have a friend whose family friend back in their home is in Western Kenya. She got married, and every time she'd get abused by her husband, she'd go home. Her parents would go to, her husband's elders would come to their home, pay a fine, talk it out, she'd go back. Pay a fine, talk it out, she'd go back. It was just a cycle, continuous cycle, until she was killed. Because abusers don't get better, they only get worse. They only get worse. And so that's something we've normalized so much, and we don't realize that connection. If you're doing it to your kids, if they feel like this is appropriate, if they feel like this is an appropriate way to solve conflict, if they feel like this is an appropriate way to alter behavior, or to improve behavior in any way, or to instill values, they're gonna be okay with it in their marriages, and they're gonna be okay with it happening to their children, to themselves and to their children, and they're gonna be okay with it happening to their grandchildren when their children have kids. And so the cycle continues. No one realizes how bad it is until now people die. And even when people do die, it's kept hush-hush. Oh, this happened. Oh no, so sad. And that same guy will get out of prison, go marry someone else. And the cycle continues. And so until we say enough is enough, hitting any form of violence, because people usually think that I'm exaggerating when I call it violence, but it is.
Why would that be exaggerated?
Oh, it's just discipline, I just slapped him, I just smacked him on the bum, no, it is a form of violence. You're using harmful force against, especially someone who's your junior, who has no social standing, because you as an adult, you hold all the power, socially, economically, even emotionally, you hold all the power. So when you're doing that to a kid, they have no control over what is happening to them. It's sad. Yeah, I've seen some really, really bad cases, and right now I'm kind of having recollections, and it's a sad situation that we really need to address, but people are not willing to. They cling onto it because, and I feel a lot of this is a matter of tit for tat, again, and also taking the easy way out. Or it happened to me, and I turned out okay. What will happen to them? I turned out to be a responsible adult. But you turned out to be a responsible adult who thinks it's okay to hit kids. So you're not okay. You didn't turn out okay. Or at least not as okay as you think. And I'm sure those same adults have issues, because I have issues from being hit as a kid. Issues that come up now, issues with anger and emotional regulation, knowing how to solve conflicts. Because I had to teach myself all these things. Knowing how to solve conflicts without it getting physical, or it becoming a huge fight, learning how to talk things out. And I usually say, this also translates into the larger society. And I feel that's why a lot of, okay, let me speak from a Kenyan perspective. That's why I feel like even with election matters and things like that, you've seen the post-election violence that happens in this country, right? And I feel like that's why it's so much easier for someone to pick up a rock and throw it, or pick up a panga and slash someone, than it is to come to a table and say, these are our differences, this is how we'll address them. Because we're not taught that in the home.
So, with that said, you said you dealt with abuse as a child. You had to learn how to, I guess, as an adult, deal with conflict without violence.
Yes.
Does that evolution also include the refusal to accept violence in relationships, in adult relationships?
You see, I had to grow out of that, because I have been in a violent relationship. Actually, I've been in 2 physically abusive relationships as an adult, in romantic relationships. And I stayed. You know, I asked why that question. Why do they stay? Why do victims stay? It's because that's what you know. It's because that's what's familiar. That's what you consider love. That's what you consider companionship. Because that's what you've seen from childhood. As we were saying earlier, it becomes normalized. Like, he hit me. Nah, it's cool. Oh, we fought. We physically fought. It's cool. We love each other. These things are swept under the rug. But it's not normal. It's not okay. And so I feel like because I had the opportunity we had a really, really good counseling center in our uni when I was in uni. And because I got the chance to seek help, to understand that there was a problem and that I needed to seek help in the first place, and then I actually ended up seeking help, that's a very unique situation. Many people don't have those resources, don't have that way out. So they stick there and they let whatever happens to them happen, and it happens to their kids, and it goes on and on and on and on. Those resources are not there because, again, if we look at our country, if we look at Kenya, mental health is not taken seriously. It's kind of like, but you look normal, you look fine, you know? So you can't be ill, you can't be troubled, you can't be bothered. But you are. The same way your tummy can get sick is the same way your brain can get sick, you know? If it's accustomed to patterns of abuse, it takes healing, takes treatment through counseling to peel back those layers and get you to heal. And so people don't realize that, and people don't acknowledge that in this country. They feel like, actually, talk of mental health is really shunned. Mental illness is stigmatized. It's everywhere. But I'm saying that because even if you look at the number of healthcare professionals dealing with mental health in Kenya, it's very minimal, you know? I think it's like one psychiatrist to 50,000 in the population. So like, how is one person going to serve 50,000 people? They'll experience, because they experience burnout themselves. And even if they don't experience burnout, these 50,000 people, how aware are they that they actually need help? That they need to seek help? How comfortable are they sitting in a counselor's chair and speaking about their problems? They're not.
And I imagine that ratio is even larger when you get into the rural areas of the country.
Exactly, because these places barely even have a dispensary, let alone a mental health center. So it's not something that's spoken about.
Okay. Just two more quick questions. I think we discussed, maybe that was another conversation, in regards to the COVID measures and how that perhaps has impacted and maybe even elevated the level of domestic violence, domestic abuse, because things are shut down, outlets are shut down.
People are locked in with their abusers. Yeah, it really has, because with the economy basically shutting down, people are out of jobs, people are frustrated. And so you can imagine people who already experience abuse, the abusers are also already under a lot of mental and financial strain. And who else are they going to take it out on? Of course, the victims of said abuse. And so it's gotten worse, definitely, because people are troubled. They don't know, they have no way out, you know? And so if I, as a victim, I was already a victim before the pandemic, and say maybe I was looking for a way out, maybe building a business or something of the sort, you know, selling my veggies on the road or something of the sort. At this point in time, I have no way out, because a lot of the times, even for the ones who want to get out, it's a matter of not having the finances to